hope our listeners aren't tired of hearing Happy New Year, because all of the people connected with this program wish to extend their hearty and sincere greetings, with every wish that 1936 will be full of gladness for you. Few companies have been so long identified with the history and growth of America as DuPont. And so it's fitting that DuPont should present the Cavalcade of America, a series of programs which tell you stories of traditional American spirit. It is the belief of the sponsor that a very real expression of the nature and tempo of American life is found in the ideal of DuPont's research chemists. Better things for better living through chemistry. Your comments on this series of programs will be appreciated very much by the sponsor. Just mail them to DuPont, Wilmington, Delaware, or to your radio station. This evening's story concerns the Declaration of Independence. Our Cavalcade Orchestra sets the stage with Victor Herbert's American Fantasy, which makes use of historic American airs.
I'll put the question. All in favor of Mr. Dickinson's resolution? Aye.
Both sides were eager to postpone the actual vote on the resolution. But many members felt that it had a good chance of passing, and so a committee was named to draft a declaration stating the reasons for such a resolution. The committee consisted of Benjamin Franklin, John Adams, Thomas Jefferson, Roger Sherman, and Robert Livingston. Jefferson, considered by many to be the best writer in the colonies, was chosen to make the original draft. Let us visit the Gratz house on Market Street, Philadelphia, late in June. Gratz is talking with his wife.
But Mr. Jefferson hasn't come down to his supper. I think I should call him.
No, don't disturb him. Mr. Adams and Dr. Franklin are with him. There are serious matters being discussed upstairs.
Well, maybe Dr. Franklin and Mr. Adams would like some supper, too.
Must you always be thinking of food? Important plans are being made for the welfare of our country. Tom Jefferson says that some delegates have been instructed to introduce another resolution for independence this session.
Oh, you're always talking politics and worrying about the country instead of attending to your business. More members of the Continental Congress to track up my floors, I suppose.
You don't appreciate the honor they do us boarding here in our home. Someday this house will be known as a place where history was made.
You wouldn't call it an honor if you had to sweep up after them. Oh, good evening, Mr. Phillips.
Good evening, Mrs. Gratz.
It's young Mr. Temple, Father.
How are you, Mr. Gratz?
Oh, come in, Mr. Phillips. Well, how can I serve you?
I was wondering if you could tell me where I could find more books or pamphlets like this Common Sense. Has Mr. Payne written any more?
I don't know, Mr. Phillips, but I'll ask Mr. Jefferson. He will know.
I'd be very grateful if you would.
Mr. Jefferson's busy now. He mustn't be disturbed. How does your father feel about your sudden interest in this kind of literature?
Father doesn't know. But I'm convinced his ideas are wrong, Mr. Gratz.
Yeah.
Our country must come first, before England or any other place. Don't you think so?
Yes, Mr. Phillips, I do think so. My parents came from Germany and settled here. They are like your father. They are always talking about the old country, but I am an American.
So am I. And our duty lies, I think, with the new country rather than the old. A place where we intend to live and bring up families. We owe it to future generations so that they may have a happy and a better place to live in.
Meanwhile, in Jefferson's room, he and his colleagues, John Adams and Benjamin Franklin, are formulating the document that was to help make the country a happy and a better place.
Well, Dr. Franklin, now that you've read the draft, what do you think?
As a whole, Mr. Jefferson, I am delighted with it. But I hope you won't be offended if a much older man makes a few slight suggestions.
Certainly not, Dr. Franklin.
For instance, you say, when in the course of human events it becomes necessary for a people Now, wouldn't one people be more significant?
Yes. Yes, one people. That's right.
And you say, we hold these truths to be sacred and undeniable. Now, I would prefer we hold these truths to be self-evident.
Self-evident is stronger.
Above all, we must be careful not to alienate any of our colonies at this time. Unless this declaration of our reasons for freedom is passed unanimously by the Continental Congress, it will utterly fail in its purpose.
You're right about that, Dr. Franklin. It must be the unanimous will of the United Colonies.
Now, I've called the colonies the United States of America. Do you like that term, Dr. Franklin?
Yes, Mr. Jefferson, I do. The United States of America. May they ever stand so.
Discussion after discussion caused further postponement of any definite action. On July 1st, 1776, the Committee of the Whole met and advised the passage of the Lee Resolution. The vote was 9 colonies for and 4 against. We find Franklin, Jefferson, and Adams the night of July 1st discussing the situation.
9 votes out of 13. No, it's not enough. If the resolution isn't passed unanimously tomorrow, the rest of the world will never believe our colonies are united. Never believe we are the United States of America.
4 colonies against: Delaware, South Carolina, Pennsylvania, and New York.
The Delaware delegation is evenly divided. The New York delegation has no instructions, and none could possibly arrive by tomorrow. The South Carolina delegates feel that their instructions aren't broad enough to allow them to vote affirmatively.
Rutledge has called them together tonight. Perhaps his eloquence may persuade them.
I'm worried about Delaware. The vote will always remain 1-1. McKean for and Reed against. We can't count on Delaware.
McKean told me that he'd sent a postwriter for Caesar Rodney. As the third member of the delegation, he's sure to favor the resolution.
Rodney's 80 miles away, and they say he's a sick man. We can't expect him to arrive in time to vote.
It's your own Pennsylvania delegation that worries me most, Dr. Franklin. That's a negative majority that no amount of eloquence or persuasion can change.
I know. Dickinson and Morris are sincere. So are Willing and Humphreys. 4-3 against. Come in.
Good evening, gentlemen.
Good evening.
Good evening, Mr. Dickinson.
I trust I'm not interrupting.
Why, not at all. Come in, Dickinson. We were just discussing you.
Not too harshly, I trust. Gentlemen, I was much impressed with the vote today.
So much so that you wish to change yours, I hope.
No, Doctor. I still believe in reconciliation. But I love my country too well to hold out against wishes of majority. I know that independence must pass, and I realize the necessity for an undivided front. My conscience won't permit my voting for the resolution, but I can stay away from the Congress.
That would make a tie in the Pennsylvania delegation, Mr. Dickinson.
I'm on my way to talk to Morris. If he also remained away tomorrow, you would have a majority in the Pennsylvania delegation.
Mr. Dickinson, you and I have long been opponents. Now I want to express my appreciation and gratitude, sir.
Of course, I can't promise for Morris.
Tomorrow will tell the tale. We must wait for tomorrow.
On the morning of July 2nd, the delegates of the Continental Congress assembled to vote on the Lee Resolution. Franklin and Adams are seated together not far from the chairman, John Hancock, as the voting proceeds.
There's 8. New Hampshire, Massachusetts, Connecticut, Rhode Island, New Jersey, Maryland, Virginia, North Carolina.
4 more to come, with New York not voting.
The chair calls on Mr. Gwinnett of the Georgia delegation. Georgia votes in favor of the revolution. The South Carolina delegation, Mr. Rutledge.
Mr. Chairman, last night we held a meeting of the South Carolina delegates. Lasted well into the morning. We have come to the conclusion that our instructions are broad enough to allow us to vote on the question. South Carolina votes in the affirmative.
Rutledge must have been very eloquent. Well, I'm beginning to breathe easier.
There are still two more, and...
At the request of Colonel McKean of Delaware, I have postponed calling on that colony until an attempt has been made to secure a full representation. Yesterday, the vote was even.
Mr. Chairman.
Here's Colonel McKean now. I was just calling on you.
Mr. Chairman, I beg to report. Our third delegate, Mr. Cesar Rodney, has just arrived. He has ridden all night and wishes to apologize for rushing in so unceremoniously. But thanks to his arrival, the Delaware delegation supports the resolution 2-1.
Only your own colony left, Dr. Franklin?
Yes, only Pennsylvania.
Dr. Franklin, have the other members of your delegation arrived as yet?
No, Mr. Chairman, and I am certain now that Mr. Dickinson and Mr. Morris are not coming. I therefore announce that the Pennsylvania delegation stands 3-2 in favor of independence.
12 ayes, with the New York delegation in sympathy but not voting. I think we may call it unanimous.
It is unanimous.
Mark my words, Dr. Franklin. July 2nd will be a day of rejoicing and celebration in these United States until the end of time.
But July 2nd, the day the resolution was passed, is not the day we celebrate. On July 4th, after much discussion as to its wording, the formal Declaration of Independence, little changed from Jefferson's original draft, was adopted unanimously by the assembled representatives of the United Colonies. On July 8th, the people of Philadelphia are gathered outside the State House to hear the Declaration read by John Nixon. On the outskirts of the crowd stands young Philip Temple with his father.
I can't see why you dragged me here, Philip. You've read that document yourself at Mr. Jefferson. You almost know it by heart. We can't hear anything here anyway.
I want to see how the people take it, Father.
People, eh? I notice not many of our friends are here.
Many of our friends have fled the town, Father.
Yeah, that is true, sir.
I'm glad you're staying.
I'm waiting to see the outcome of all this. Anyone can put words on paper. But will they live up to their word? Will they sign this declaration?
Indeed they will, Mr. Temple. I'm sure of that.
We'll see, Gratz.
This is a great occasion, isn't it, Mr. Gratz?
A day to remember, lad. I'm glad to see you taking an interest, Mr. Temple. I feared perhaps you'd left town with your friends.
Father's staying in Philadelphia, but I'm leaving town, Mr. Gratz.
You, Philip?
Tomorrow I start for Boston to join General Washington.
Oh, good lad. Does your father approve?
The boy's of age. If I tried to stop him, your Liberty boys would try to run me out of town, I suppose.
Don't mind what Father says. I really think he's rather proud of me.
Mr. Nixon has finished reading the Declaration.
Those men in Congress have pledged their lives, their fortunes, and their honor. Could I do less? Every church bell in Philadelphia seems to be ringing.
Yeah, ringing in a new era.
They've given us the ideal. It's our duty to make it real.
On August 2nd, the delegates assembled. 56 signatures were affixed to the document, each man pledging his life, his fortune, and his sacred honor to uphold the principles of freedom and equality so that we and future generations should have life, liberty, and the chance for happiness. There are no braver names than these in the cavalcade of America.
The American spirit of independence is well exercised by the American housewife as she does her daily shopping. A good example of Mrs. Housewife's firm intention to get the things she buys in first-class condition, fresh, clean, and sanitary, and to see exactly what she's buying, is shown by the revolutionary improvements in packaging during recent years, particularly transparent wrapping. The story of transparent wrapping, or cellulose film, which is another name for it, is a mighty interesting story of chemistry. First manufactured in 1898 in England to wrap the famous Pears soap, and improved in 1908 by a French chemist, this material is now made in the United States. DuPont makes and sells it under the trademark cellophane. Maybe you have seen, or you will see, the recent spectacular moving picture, A Midsummer Night's Dream. in which 700,000 yards of cellophane were used to create the beautiful illusion of fairyland. Or you may have seen pianos and automobiles wrapped in cellophane. But these are the novel and unusual uses. The importance of cellophane to you is the way it protects your health by guarding things from dirt and germs, and also the way it keeps foods fresh and delicious. How can man produce a substance as shimmery as a moonbeam and as elusive as thin air out of the towering spruce tree? Because that's exactly where cellophane cellulose film comes from. Chips of spruce wood go through various chemical processes to end up as a thick liquid. Then an amazing transformation takes place in one step. As the liquid cellulose is forced through a long, narrow slot, it flows evenly into an acid bath. And the instant it touches the acid, it coagulates and becomes solid. Then it's purified and bleached until it's as clear as crystal and made flexible for easy and secure wrapping. DuPont chemists made many improvements in the original discovery. They found how to make this transparent wrapping moisture-proof to protect the freshness of foods and tobacco. In short, the thing to remember is that cellophane cellulose film is something chemistry has created to protect you by protecting the things you buy. It well illustrates the creed of DuPont research chemists: better things for better living through chemistry.
This program has come to you through the courtesy of DuPont, one of America's oldest enterprises, makers of chemical products since 1802. It's one of a series of programs in the Cavalcade of America, presented by DuPont each Wednesday evening at 8 o'clock Eastern Standard Time over the Columbia Broadcasting System. When presented on the air, each program also contains a short, interesting story of chemical achievement, illustrating the DuPont chemist's creed: better things for better living through chemistry.
Mr. President, starring Edward Arnold. The American Broadcasting Company and its affiliated stations present Mr. President. Mr. President, at home in the White House, the elected leader of our country, our fellow citizen and neighbor. These are little-known stories of the men who've lived in the White House, dramatic, exciting events in their lives that you and I so rarely hear. True human stories of Mr. President. Now, Edward Arnold as Mr. President. Let's visit him in the White House. It's evening. The old mansion is resting quietly after a busy day. Only one window on the ground floor shows a light. We enter and find ourselves in the president's study.
Good evening. Sit down, won't you? You know, the problem of being peacemaker in an argument is not an easy one, particularly when you have two brilliant individuals involved, each firmly believing that he is right. You have to see both sides, but you can't take either side. And still you have to keep them together, as I tried to do in tonight's story. Later on, of course, I'll tell you which president these incidents really happened to. But meanwhile, you may be able to guess. The personal controversy between Ed Taylor and Tom Faraday had been going on for some time. But one morning it came right out in the open at a meeting of my cabinet. All right, gentlemen, we're ready for the report of the Secretary of State. Mr. Faraday, please.
Mr. President, the newly appointed minister, Charles Montreux, will soon be arriving in this country. I don't know him personally, but I've heard something of his reputation. He'll be very much in sympathy with the ideals of your administration, Mr. President, and with the ideals of our country.
A question, Mr. Faraday.
Yes, Mr. Taylor?
It's not important whether Montreux is sympathetic with us or not. I'd like to know if we're apt to be sympathetic with him. I see a difference.
What do you mean, Ed?
France has just been through a revolution and civil war, and her new government is at war with England. The majority of Americans hope to see England win that war.
I beg your pardon, Mr. Taylor. The overwhelming majority of Americans are pro-French in sympathy, and they should be. The new French government is founded on the same liberal ideas as ours. Besides, France is an ally of ours by treaty.
Mr. President.
Yes, Ed.
I wish to make a motion for the Cabinet's consideration. I move that this government suspend the treaty with France.
Mr. President, we can't do that.
Please, gentlemen, please. Go on, Ed.
I move that this government suspend the treaty with France. We signed it with the previous government of France. That government no longer exists. We can no longer be bound by the treaty.
Good heavens, Mr. Taylor. The treaty is not between our government and their government. It's between our people and the French people. Your motion is dishonest and cowardly.
Calling me names won't change the facts, Faraday. Any mark of favor from us to France will only put us in danger of war with England. I say we should not even receive this new French minister.
Impossible.
Faraday, you're not even listening to my arguments. You're opposing me purely for the sake of opposing.
Gentlemen.
But, Mr. President,
Ed, please.
I beg your pardon, sir.
Gentlemen, we face one big question. Is our treaty with France still binding? Whatever we decide, there's the plain risk of war, and that's the last thing we want. Meanwhile, I want all of you to forget your personal feelings and ask yourselves only what's best for our country. Tom, when is Montreux due to arrive?
In about 2 weeks, sir. But I want to warn this meeting. We'll solve nothing by following advice such as Taylor's been urging. I am Secretary of State, and if I'm to be hampered and obstructed by the Secretary of Treasury, my advice ignored, I can no longer remain in this cabinet.
Oh, Tom, please now.
Mr. President, I don't know why you let those two men cause you so much trouble.
Oh, I don't suppose they realize it.
You're more important than Mr. Taylor and Mr. Faraday and the whole cabinet and Congress.
Now, just a minute, Miss Sarah. I'm not more important. My job is.
All right, your job then. But if they can't get together, you'll have to choose between them.
I need them both, Miss Sarah. I know their points of view clash. Taylor favors the notion of an aristocratic monarchy. Faraday is a democratic Republican. One believes in authority, and the other has faith in the people.
And neither is willing to give up his ideas in favor of the other.
Miss Sarah, in times like these, they will have to. England and France are at war. Other nations may join at any moment. We may be involved. We've got to have national unity.
It can't depend on only two men.
It does. I've got to bring them together, Miss Sarah. I've got to talk to them separately. First send me, send for Tom Faraday, then get me Ed Taylor. Sit down, Tom. I've asked you to come here because of what happened at the cabinet meeting this morning.
I would have said more, Mr. President, but I was afraid of losing my temper entirely. You heard Taylor in the meeting. Of all the short-sighted, dangerous, cold-blooded suggestions I ever heard. I have listened to him, sir, for over 3 years. I have seen him twist you around his little finger. Anything to block me.
Well, I have something to say about that, Tom.
Then I've got to ask you, sir. Either demand his resignation from the cabinet or let me resign.
Sour grapes, Tom?
Frankly, it isn't all on account of Ed Taylor. I want to go home, have some time with my family. I'm 50 years old, Mr. President, and I've been in government service for most of the last 20. I've got grown daughters. I want to know them better before it's too late.
I'd like to go home, too, Tom. But I can't.
Of course, but if I'm no longer in the cabinet, sir, things will go much more smoothly. Let Taylor have his way.
I will not. And I won't let you have your way either. I want you to promise to cooperate with Ed Taylor.
I don't see what good can come of it.
Tom, both you and Ed have a great deal to give your country. You've proven it already. You'll go on proving it in the years ahead. I'm not going to let either of you fail in your duty. You belong in the cabinet, and I'm going to do everything I can to keep you both in it.
Mr. President, I don't like Taylor. I don't agree with anything he says or does.
Well, you can compromise. You've got to.
Oh, yes, we can compromise on small points. But when it comes to matters of principle, I'm sorry. I can't compromise. And let me say this about Taylor. I don't think he can either.
Well, what about my principles?
What?
Well, never mind. Do I have your promise? I want you both in the cabinet, almost at any cost. At least until we solve the French question.
Yes, Mr. President. I'll do my best.
Good. Now about the French treaty and Montreux.
Mr. President, you can see how impossible it is to suspend the treaty.
So far, I agree with you. But suppose Montreux insists we join France in her war against England.
I don't know, sir.
It seems to me it depends largely on what orders Montreux's got from his government in Paris. And it depends on public opinion here, doesn't it?
That means it depends on Montreux.
Exactly. So let's not try to decide everything now. Let's wait for Montreux to arrive in this country. Meanwhile, Tom, you won't forget your promise.
I'll try not to, sir.
I'm grateful to you. Thank you. Very grateful. I'm glad to see you, Ed. Sit down, won't you? I want to talk to you about what happened at the cabinet meeting.
If it's about Tom Faraday, that was disgraceful, sir.
I'm sorry that your feelings had to come to a head on such an important question. Ed, England and France are at war. If we're not careful, we can easily find ourselves in the middle. We cannot allow personal antagonism to threaten our nation's unity.
I agree entirely, Mr. President. But the situation's impossible, and you've got to do something about it.
Got to?
Faraday is a schemer. The ideas he gives you are false, dangerous, tricky.
Ed, I frequently get ideas of my own, you know.
Faraday knows how to make you think they're yours. He knows how to fight me through you. I can fight him alone and beat him. I can't fight him and you. I've reformed the finances of the country, but still he resists. And he won't be satisfied till he's spoiled everything I've done. Will you ask him for his resignation?
No, I won't.
Then I want you to accept my resignation.
Aren't you forgetting something? Aren't you forgetting that your work isn't the whole thing? It's only part of the whole?
Spoil a part and you spoil the whole.
I don't want to take any credit from you that's rightfully yours. But I'm the only one who can judge what each of you is.
Exactly, sir. I want you to judge between me and Faraday and choose between us.
I refuse to do that, Fred, emphatically.
Then I'll do it for you.
Ed, will you... And I'm sorry. I don't mean to get angry, but I've got to tell you a simple truth you're losing sight of. You're responsible to me, but I'm responsible to the whole country.
Of course, but...
Just a moment. You're an honest, conscientious public servant, and you naturally think only your ideas are best for the country. But maybe not all of them are. You have your opinion about the French situation. Tom Faraday has his. But we can only find out which is right by a little less fighting and a little more cooperation between you. You've got to learn to cooperate with Tom Faraday.
Me? Let him learn to cooperate.
Oh, cooperate doesn't mean give in, Ed. It means cooperate. If Faraday cooperates with you, give and take. Reasonable compromise. Will you cooperate with him?
Will he cooperate with me?
I've talked to him. I think he will. I'm asking you to do the same. Will you, Ed?
I'll do everything I can, which is in the best interest of my country.
Thank you very much, and I'm very grateful to you.
Good day, Mr. President.
Good day, Ed.
Good day, Miss Sarah.
Goodbye, Mr. Taylor.
Well, Mr. President, have you soothed their ruffled feelings?
Well, frankly, Miss Sarah, I don't think I can change their feelings, but I have appealed to their intelligence. I hope it works.
But, Mr. President, if you can't change their feelings, is it really worth it?
As long as it keeps the country in one piece, it is, Miss Sarah.
But you're the one doing that. You as the president, not
Miss
they.
Sarah, with Taylor's financial reform, we're keeping the nation's economy in good shape. That's important to business people in the East. And with Faraday in the cabinet, farmers, small merchants, working men know that we're working for them. Unity in America, Miss Sarah. Unity in America.
Yes, I see. Unity at your expense.
Well, as to the rest of the world, Miss Sarah, I'd admire any country that could have in its government at the same time two such men as Taylor and Faraday.
Mr. President.
Yes, Miss Sarah.
Mr. Taylor is here to see
Oh,
you.
good. Come in, Taylor. Come in.
Mr. President.
How are you?
Montreux has arrived in this country, sir.
Well, didn't we expect him to?
Yes, Mr. President. But where would you expect him to come on his arrival in this country?
Oh, to the capital, of course.
It might interest you to know, sir, that he disembarked at Charleston, South Carolina.
Well, he must have had a good reason. I see nothing to be alarmed about.
I tell you, Montreux is up to something. I wouldn't be surprised if Faraday hadn't arranged.
Now, just a moment, Ed. Let's not start this all over again. If Montreux is up to something, then it's more than ever necessary that we stop fighting among ourselves.
I only wanted to forewarn you, sir.
Thank you, Ed. But let's not anticipate trouble.
organization has been anticipating your arrival, Mr. Monroe. I assure you, you have many supporters here, sir.
Thank you, Monsieur Bellows.
We've made all the preliminary arrangements, but these are the best accommodations we could get for you here in Charleston.
Oh, but they are charming, Monsieur Bellows. Charming. Listen to the people outside.
Yes, maybe you ought to say a few words to them, huh?
Speak to them?
Yes, sure.
Yes, a good idea. My friend, I bring you greetings from France, from the people of France, from your fellow fighters for liberty. I know you feel as I do, that France is the champion of freedom in all the world, and that England is the enemy of freedom. Thank you, my friend, thank you. Close the window, Monsieur Bellows.
Yes.
I am pleased, my friend. The people are most friendly to me.
Yes, sir. I wrote you they would be, sir.
It will make my work and yours so much easier.
You won't have any trouble, Mr. Monroe. You can see for yourself. Nobody's neutral so far as your war is concerned.
Yes, I am satisfied.
Lots of men will be glad to go over to France to fight for you. Our committee's got thousands of names already. And shipyards will be glad to sell your ships to fight against England, sir.
Monsieur Bellows, I want much more than men and ships.
More?
I want the United States to declare war on England.
War? Well, that's a little more than any of your friends in this country expected, sir.
It is logical.
Well, you may find some people not willing to go that far, sir.
Then we will change their minds.
But we'd better think about
We
that.
have thought about it, monsieur, in Paris. And I have orders from my government to work secretly to stir up public opinion in favor of war against England.
Well, yes, that had better be very secret.
Perhaps not. In the cabinet is that great and good friend of France, Monsieur Thomas Faraday.
But don't forget the president.
The president? I have plans for him. I do not think he will give us any trouble.
Well, you'll be seeing him soon.
I do not want to see him soon.
What?
I have decided to take 2 or 3 weeks to see something of your beautiful country, to talk to the people, you see?
Yeah.
Now, Monsieur Bellows, some dinner with some good wine, don't you think? We might even drink to France's new ally in our war.
Tom, Ed, I've asked you both here to find out your opinion about Minister Monroe. I've been reading reports of the speeches he's been making in every town on his way here from Charleston. He's not behaving like a minister. Trying to influence public opinion in a country where he's only an official guest.
It is very strange, Mr. President.
Strange. It's outrageous.
A number of papers are supporting him, too, and pro-French groups are forming. Especially in the South, Tom, with help from your friends.
Well, that's not my doing, sir. Besides, what about the pro-British sentiment stirred up by tailors' organizations in New England?
Listen to me, Faraday. You
Now, wait a minute. Wait a moment, both of you. Trying to beat each other isn't any help. Now, let's stick to Monroe.
Mr. President, I think his behavior is a deliberate insult to you.
Ed, I didn't think that would bother you.
I beg your pardon.
Anyway, that's not important. It's true he's taking his own time and coming here to be officially received. But on the other hand...
It's an outrage, sir. I urge you to refuse to see him when he does come. Let him go back to France, a failure, and face the humiliation.
What do you think, Tom?
I agree that Monroe is behaving badly, sir, but let's bear in mind there's great sympathy for France in this country. He may be overwhelmed by it.
That pro-French sympathy you're always talking about, Faraday, it comes from the most stupid part of the population.
Taylor, Well, let's not argue. Since the treaty is still binding, Mr. President, we cannot refuse to accept Monroe as minister. I'm sure he'll be more discreet in the future. Let's not act against him now.
You agree, Ed?
I don't see what difference it makes, what I think.
It does make a difference, Ed. Don't you see that...
Very well, sir.
Now, the important thing to remember, however, is that Monroe's got to be handled very carefully by all of us. For instance, when he presents his credentials, I must receive him as an accredited representative of a friendly power. Mr. Monroe, On behalf of the citizens of the United States, I welcome you to this country. There has always been great fellow feeling between your people and ours, and I'm sure your presence among us will only increase it.
I am confident it will, Monsieur le Président. The people of France look to America as the one nation in the entire world which truly understands their yearning for freedom.
We wish your country and every country the best of good fortune, sir.
Well, Mr. Montreux, how did the president receive you, sir?
Well, he was very polite, but, Monsieur Burroughs, I am not sure that he understands our problem.
Well, when it's presented properly, he will, sir. After all, you have an eloquent champion in the Secretary of State, sir.
Yes, Monsieur Faraday. But why not? Our cause is the cause of freedom. And is that not also the cause of this country? Whoever helps France helps the cause of freedom. Whoever keeps France and the United States apart is an enemy of freedom. But, Monsieur Burroughs, we have many friends here.
Gentlemen, we all realize our tremendous obligations to the nation which once assisted us so generously in our struggle for freedom. A nation to which we are still financially indebted. That nation is now fighting her own battle to win a similar freedom. Gentlemen, as Secretary of State, I am privileged to introduce to this club our great and good friend, the French Minister, Monsieur Charles Montreux.
Gentlemen, France is fighting for her life. It is not enough for you, our American friends, to give us sympathy. We need you as an ally.
Gentlemen, as Secretary of the Treasury, I address this meeting of our party in New York. And I want to warn you, don't be carried away by the passions of those who are trying to take us into a war against England. If our sympathies belong anywhere, they belong with England.
Gentlemen of the newspapers, my colleague in the Cabinet, Secretary of the Treasury, Taylor, sees fit to arouse public opinion against France. He forgets the bonds that unite us and that great country.
Bonds between us and France? I ask you, gentlemen, where can it lead us? Only to a war against England. The Secretary of State should choose his friends more carefully.
Tom, Ed, I can't let this go on any longer.
Mr. President.
Just a moment, Ed. You remember, both of you, just before I received Montreux, I asked you to be extra cautious. You remember that, don't you, Tom?
Yes, but Mr.
Both
President...
of you have ignored that request. Tom, you've openly favored Montreux, deliberately helped him arouse pro-French feeling. Ed, you've deliberately stirred up opposition feeling.
I've only been trying to strike a balance. Faraday...
All right. Which one of you started it isn't important now. The point is, how do we stop it? Gentlemen, I'm going to issue a proclamation of neutrality.
A final copy of the Neutrality Proclamation for your signature, sir.
Thank you, Miss Sarah. There you are.
Is something wrong, Mr. President?
Oh, the usual, only more so.
Mr. Taylor and Mr. Faraday.
Everything I've done with those two may come to nothing, Miss Sarah. I've just got to hope they'll come to their senses of their own accord, or that something will happen to wake them up.
Monsieur Faraday.
Yes, sit down, Mr. Montreux. You've, of course, you know about the Neutrality Proclamation.
It is incredible, monsieur. I've talked to many people. I've been through many towns and cities. I know how everyone feels. They are not neutral.
The president wants to avoid war, Mr. Montreux.
And you, Monsieur Faraday, all over France you are known to be our friend.
I was, and I am.
Do you intend to enforce the neutrality laws?
I am the Secretary of State. That is the law of my country, Mr. Montreux.
The proclamation says it is a crime for any American citizen to aid my country.
That is right.
It would not be a crime for me to help my country, would it?
I'd be very careful, Mr. Montreux.
Careful? Monsieur, I fight for liberty. The time to be careful is past. Come in, gentlemen. Come in. I have invited you here, gentlemen, because I know that the newspapers you represent are already friendly to my country. I know you will be interested, therefore, in these documents.
What are they, Mr. Montreux?
These are copies of the official correspondence between myself and the American administration. You may publish them all.
Well, this is an unusual thing to do, Mr. Montreux.
These are unusual times. In these letters you will find all the true reasons why this country owes our allegiance to my country. And you will find, too, the ridiculous reasons given by the President and his cabinet for not honoring our treaty.
Mr. Montreux, only yesterday the President proclaimed neutrality. Well, you can't change that by publishing these letters.
You're wrong, my friend. Once the people and Congress read the truth, they will see that the President has acted like a coward. Congress, the true rulers of your great country, will obey the popular feeling. They will force the President and his cabinet to change.
Gentlemen of the cabinet, I think now is the time for me to tell you a decision I've come to. I may hurt some of your feelings, but what I've got to say is more important than anybody's feeling, including mine. I've taken great pains to prevent one part of our country from turning against another part. That's why I've literally begged you, Ed Taylor and Tom Faraday, to stay in the cabinet. But now we find the country split in a different way. Half the people are for France and half for England. And meanwhile, they're forgetting where our own interests lie. That's where our quarreling among ourselves has led us. Instead, let's think only of what's best for our country, now and in the future. I have decided to ask the French government to call Charles Montreux home.
President, sir, Mr. Montreux is very anxious to talk to you, sir.
Of course, Tom. Good evening, Mr. Montreux.
Monsieur le Président, you should be glad to know I have sent my resignation to Paris.
Well, frankly, I'm glad. Though I'm sorry this all happened.
I was, monsieur.
You were, Mr. Montreux?
Well, I am afraid... Well, I admit... I made many mistakes. But, Monsieur le Président, I have learned a great deal while I have been here. I have learned a great deal about the kind of freedom we are fighting for. That freedom exists only here. I like this country very much, Monsieur le Président. I am not going back to France.
Well, I'm glad to welcome a new citizen, Mr. Montreux. And what are your plans?
They are somewhat romantic, monsieur.
Oh, really?
I plan to marry.
Well,
congratulations, Montreux. Congratulations.
And I shall settle down in New York State.
Well, that's fine, Mr. Montreux. At the beginning, I wasn't so sure we'd have a happy ending. But thank you for coming to see me. And, gentlemen, I think there's one thing we all agree upon. We all like it here. Well, have you guessed yet which president this story happened to? The time was 1793, when George Washington was Mr. President. The man I've called Taylor this evening was really Secretary of the Treasury, Alexander Hamilton, who was always at sword's points with Secretary of State Thomas Jefferson. Monroe was really Citizen Genet, who settled in New York State after losing his appointment, married a daughter of a governor of New York, and lived happily ever after. And as you know, Thomas Jefferson later became President of the United States and served 2 terms. Incidentally, since today is the day of Thanksgiving, it's interesting to remember that George Washington first proclaimed it a national holiday. Come and see me again next week, won't you? I'll have another story for you about the White House and Mr. President I'm sure you'll enjoy. Good night.
Edward Arnold appears as Mr. President by arrangement with Metro-Goldwyn-Mayer, producers of Sinclair Lewis, Cass Timberlane, starring Spencer Tracy, Lana Turner, and Zachary Scott. Mr. President is presented each week by the American Broadcasting Company. It is produced by Robert G. Jennings, directed by Dwight Hauser. Miss Sarah was played by Betty Lou Gerson. Tonight's story, by Paul R. Milton, was suggested by incidents in the administration of President George Washington. Music was composed and conducted by Basil Adlam. Be sure to listen again next week when Edward Arnold brings you another story of Mr. President. This is ABC, the American Broadcasting Company.
Navigator to pilot. Go ahead, Ben. Coast of Holland, just ahead.
Good. Pilot to bombardier. Open bomb base and prepare to bomb.
Right. Bomb doors open. Navigator to pilot. We're over the target. There's West Capella. And there's the Great Dyke.
Pilot to bombardier. Target below. She's all yours.
I need a little left. No, too much. Give me a little right. Just a little. There. Steady now. Hold what you've got. That's it. Hold it. Steady. Hold it. Bombs away.
Mission accomplished. The long train of bombs hurtles earthward, and the great dike at West Capella in Holland is breached. The ocean pours through the spreading holes, washing over the land, drowning out the gun emplacements of the Germans. Modern warfare? Well, not exactly modern. A Dutchman thought of the same strategy 400 years ago. His name was William the Silent. He wasn't a silent man at all. It is his story we tell tonight. His story and the story of another time in history, when Holland was fighting for its freedom, and the Dutch broke the dikes.
The NBC University of the Air presents Chapter 7 of We Came This Way, a new historical series for our listeners at home and overseas. With John W. Vandercook as narrator, we present Chapter 7, a story of how the Dutch broke the dikes in We Came This Way.
In the year 1555, Charles V of Spain gave up his throne and retired to a monastery. A tired old man, swollen with gout and sick of conquest. Forget him, but remember his son and successor.
Philip II, by the grace of God, King of Spain. Caesar Augustus, Lord of the earth. absolute dominator in Asia, Africa, and America, Duke of Milan and both the Burgundies, hereditary sovereign of the 17 provinces of the Netherlands.
Philip was a medieval man in a world where feudalism was crumbling, an autocrat in an age when men were beginning to question authority. Philip tried to turn back the clock. He wanted to check the Reformation, build a gigantic Spanish monarchy, and reduce his other possessions to vassal states. He almost succeeded. He would have succeeded except for one thing. William the Silent, Prince of Orange, opposed him. Philip sent the Duke of Alva to the Netherlands with an army. William fled for his life. But don't forget William. This is only the prologue to our story. Alva rode into the Netherlands on a white horse with 10,000 soldiers. He looked around him and he saw the fear on people's faces. But he failed to see the anger in their hearts. So he wrote a letter to Philip.
I am here. So much is certain. Whether I am welcome is of little consequence. I have tamed men of iron in my day. Shall I not easily crush these men of butter? Violence is the only way with these people. I shall act accordingly.
Alva's first act was to establish the Council of Blood. 3 months later, he wrote again.
I would that all the heads of all His Majesty's enemies were upon a single neck, so that I might strike them off with one blow. To date, I have had killed 1,800 heretics.
But even Alva was too slow for Philip. In February 1568, he had the Inquisition pass sentence upon the Netherlands.
Let it be made known that through this holy office, all inhabitants of the Netherlands, with the few exceptions noted below, are herewith condemned to death as heretics. And let it be further known that this sentence is to be carried out immediately, without regard to age, sex, or condition.
Never before or since was a whole nation sentenced to death. Even children went to the stake. The whole population of the Netherlands might have been swallowed up in one vast grave if William the Silent had been a different kind of man. But he was what he was. So, in exile by almost superhuman effort, he assembled an army. Then he came back to the Netherlands to liberate the people, to fight for what he valued more than his life. What William fought for was something new in the world. It was an idea, freedom of conscience. And it is being fought for even today.
Yes, I came back. There is a time, I think, in every man's life when he must choose between inaction and struggle. I came back to lead the people against the Duke of Alva and the greatest army in Europe. My army was a people's army, a ragged, undisciplined, but savagely loyal force. We called ourselves beggars. For beggars was the name the King's Regent had given us years before when we had gone to petition against Alva's coming. For 2 years we fought, a losing fight. I saw my 3 younger brothers killed in battle, saw Antwerp ravaged, saw Zutphen fall, Haarlem fall. Then, when I lay ill of fever at Delft and powerless to stop them, I saw the Spaniards under Valdez march on the city of Leiden in Holland. If Leiden surrendered, all was lost. The people of the Netherlands could stand no more defeat. But at Leiden, where General Valdez was proposing terms of surrender to the Burgers.
Burgomaster, a stubborn fool. I am offering the people of Leiden pardon and mercy if you surrender the city at once. Pardon and mercy, do you understand?
I understand, General Valdez, that the flute sounds sweet when the fowler lures the bird. We know what happened at Haarlem when they surrendered. Spanish mercy. Spanish fury.
You know the alternative to surrender.
Yes, we know.
Very well. The arrangement suits us admirably. We lay siege. We wait outside the walls while you starve inside.
The Spanish army has no other engagements?
You are cool now, Burgomaster. But you will change your tune. I tell you that Leyden will be taken. If I fall in the siege, my son will come and take my place. If he falls, my second son will take his place. And if he falls, then my wife will come from Spain to take his place.
And who will take your wife's place, General Valdez? My name is Peter van der Werf. I was the burgomaster of Leyden, and I do not want you to think that I was a brave man. I did what I did because sometimes a man has but one choice. We had lived for 5 years under Alva. Nothing worse could happen to us after that. So the Spanish army waited outside Leyden for us to starve inside. And we waited for the prince to send us aid. 2 months went by, and every day there was a little less food than the day before. Then one day...
Peter.
Yes, Anna.
There's a boy outside. He says his name is Dirk van Ziel. He has 2 pigeons in a cage.
Pigeons? Tell him to come in, Anna.
I'll tell him. You can go in now.
Thank you. Burgomaster, I had to see you.
What is it, lad? What do you want?
To save Leyden, sir.
Save Leyden? How will you save Leyden?
Isn't it true, sir, that you've been trying to get a message to the prince to send us help?
Yes, it's true.
And that both couriers you sent were captured by the Spanish?
And tortured?
I could get to Delft, sir.
You?
I know the road like the palm of my hand. I could do it blindfolded.
Yes, but the Spanish would not be blindfolded.
I could slip out at night. I know where there's a hole in the wall, grown over with weeds. Only a boy could get through. I could slip past the sentry.
And suppose they saw you?
I'd run. I'd hide under the bank of the canal. Or I'd lie flat in the water with my nose out. I tell you, sir, I could get to Delft.
How old are you, lad?
16. But what you need for the trip is a boy, sir. Not a slow, old man, fat with drinking too much beer.
But if you did manage to sneak out of the city and get to the prince with a message, you'd never be able to get back in with the prince's answer.
I'd not try to return, sir.
Yeah, but the object of the trip is to bring back word from the prince.
I wouldn't come back, sir. But my pigeons would. You see, sir, they're homing pigeons.
Go on, lad. Tell me more of Leyden.
Well, the food is almost gone, sir. And some talk of surrender. They say... they say that you have deserted us.
No, lad. The fair maid of Holland has had many suitors, but she chose me above all others. I'll not desert her.
You send an army to help us?
If I had an army, I'd have sent it long ago. It was cut to pieces at Moekerheide. The only force I've left is the fleet. The sea beggars.
But Leyden's not on the sea. How could you send the sea beggars to Leyden?
By sending the sea to Leyden first.
What's that, sir?
If the dikes were broken, the whole lowland between here and Leyden would be flooded.
Of course, the dikes. I'd never thought of it. Then why not break the dikes, sir?
I would have long ago. Wanted to from the minute Leyden was besieged.
Then why?
The Estates General.
Oh, they won't agree to it.
No, not yet. But they must decide.
And what about Leyden, sir? Will we be left to starve to the last man?
No, lad, I've not given up. Tomorrow I go back to Rotterdam to meet with the Estates once more. And may God in his mercy give me the wisdom to make them see.
The prince's proposal to break the dikes was fantastic when he made it 2 months ago. It is still fantastic.
5 centuries our people have labored to push back the sea. Is all their work to be destroyed now?
If the dikes are broken, it will flood the Rhineland, the Delftland, the Skiland.
And all the adjoining districts.
I myself stand to lose many thousand guilders by the flooding of the land.
We will now hear from His Excellency the Prince.
Gentlemen, I make my last appeal to you. If Leiden falls, then Holland will be cut in 2. With Leiden will collapse our last hope. The Netherlands will once more be at the mercy of the tyrant. You know what this means. You have seen the streets of your cities running with blood. You have shuddered in your homes and waited for the knock on the door that would drag you off to the gallows. If you have escaped, and thousands of your countrymen have died for a simple thing, a God-given thing, a thing that men should enjoy as freely as they breathe fresh air. The freedom to worship God as their conscience directs. Think not of your purses now, but of that freedom. Not of a parcel of land, but of those who will come after you to inherit that for which we fight. Do this thing I ask of you. Empower me to break the dikes and send the ocean to Leiden. And I tell you, what you do here today will be remembered. All generations to come will call you blessed. The Estates General yielded. And on the 3rd day of August, 1574, I stood on the great outer dike near Rotterdam with my chief engineer. It was an ordinary summer day, daisies in the meadows, crows in the grain fields, a lazy wind turning the windmills. A crowd had gathered, and we bowed our heads for a moment. God grant us to succeed in this undertaking. God bless Holland. God keep Leiden.
Are you ready now, Your Excellency?
Yes, I'm ready.
At the sound of the cannon, let the work go forward. Let the dike be pierced and the ocean come in. Ready, set, fire.
The dike was broken. All the patient effort of 5 centuries destroyed. At Schiedam and Rotterdam, the floodgates were opened, and the water leaped forward, washing over the orchards, the grain fields, and the meadows. Where fat cows had grazed was now the bottom of the sea. But even as men watched, their earthly possessions vanish. They knew a great exaltation. Afterwards, they might carp and haggle and criticize. But for the moment, their vision was pure, unobstructed. They looked upon the desolation and saw something else. The waters of freedom washing over the lowlands.
The boy's pigeon came back to Leiden with the message that the dikes had been broken, and we were wild with relief and hope. It was a foolish thing I did, but the end seemed so near. I gave the order.
Hear ye, hear ye! By the order of the Burgomaster, rations of food will be doubled. Let all good men and true. Praise God. The ocean is on its way to Leiden. Leiden will be saved.
A week passed. The last of our food was eaten, and still the ocean did not come. The plague came instead. Plague and famine worked silently together. The church bells tolled 1,000 dead the first week. The second week passed. Dogs, cats, rats, everything that lived but man was killed and eaten. Another 1,000 died, and still there was no sign of the water. The third week, people were chewing on old shoe leather, eating the bark of trees, the roots, and swelling up and dying. An inch or two of water, but no more, had crept feebly across the meadows about Leiden. And Spanish soldiers stood below the city walls and mocked us.
Hola, Leidener! Where is your miracle? Weren't you expecting an ocean? Tell your prince to work another miracle and invent a boat that can sail on dry land.
By the end of the fourth week, 7,000 were dead of the famine and pestilence. My wife, Anna, was one of them. No one could dare to hear the church bells toll any longer. So I ordered them to cease. And that was how it was with Leiden when General Valdez unbuckled his sword and paid me another visit.
Senor Burgomaster.
What is it you would have of me now, General Valdez?
I've come for the last time to offer you pardon and mercy, if you will surrender.
You had your answer 4 months ago.
4 months ago, you had hope. A faint hope that your prince might send you help. But now you have nothing.
You lie.
A month ago, the dikes were cut. But did the water come to Leiden? No, senor. Even God mocks you. He has made the wind stop blowing. The water sinks instead of rising. The prince's fleet, my courier tells me, is stuck in the mud 2 miles from where it started. You see, senor, your last hope is gone.
No, General Valdez. You are wrong. We live. And as long as we live, we have hope.
Pardon me, senor, but we Spanish are not fools. We know you have nothing between you and starvation but a few mangy dogs and cats.
Then, as long as you hear a dog bark or a cat mew, know that Leiden holds out. You wait like vultures to pick our bones. But know this, General Valdez. When our last hour comes and we can fight no more, we will set fire to the city and die in the flames. Nothing will be left for you. Nothing.
What's that? In God's name, where's that music coming from?
From the people, General. The people of Leiden whom you say are beaten. Today we celebrate the birthday of the Prince of Orange.
May God forgive the burgomaster that lie. It was not my birthday. He had ordered the town musicians out and the people to parade so that Valdez would not know their desperation. I was desperate, too. I had counted on wind and tide to carry the seawater to Leiden. But for weeks, not a breath of air had stirred. The sea beggars were founded in a sea of mud. On the night of October 1st, I stood on the dike. The dike I had reached with so much hope. With me was the boy, Dirk Van Ziel.
The water's like a mirror. I never saw it so still.
Do you believe in miracles, lad?
Yes, sir. I think I do.
Good. They say they only happen to those who believe in them.
Oh, It would be a miracle, wouldn't it, sir, if the wind should suddenly rise and blow the ocean to Leiden.
You think that would be asking too much?
Oh, no, sir. If God has willed it, it will happen.
I see you are a good Calvinist.
Yes, sir. What is it? God bless you, sir. Are you taking cold, sir?
No, it's nothing.
Nothing, did you say? Listen.
It's the wind. The wind has changed.
And the sea is moving.
There were 3 feet of water in the meadows about Leiden by October 4th. And another of Dirk's pigeons had returned with the message that the fleet, the sea beggars, were on their way to save us. I kept watch till almost daybreak, then dropped off to sleep. I was awakened. I'm coming. What is it, man?
The city wall is falling.
No, it can't be.
But it's true, sir. The wall between the Cowgate and the Tower of Burgundy has fallen.
Then the Spaniards have minded. They mean to attack us before the fleet comes. They'll be in the city before it is light.
What are we to do, Burgomaster?
We fight them, of course. Listen, the captain of the guard is calling out our men. Every man, woman, and child in Leiden who is not too weak to stand lined up in orderly array before the fallen wall. The home guard had guns. The rest had pikes, axes, hammers, hay forks. The women had their kitchen knives. A few held lighted torches. We knew what we would do. As long as we could, we would fight the Spaniards off. Then we would set fire to the city and die in the flames. While we waited for dawn and for the enemy to attack, we prayed.
Surely he shall deliver me from the snare of the fowler and the noisome pestilence. Thou shalt not be afraid of the terror by night, nor the arrow that flieth by day, nor of the pestilence that walketh in darkness, nor of the destruction that wasteth at noonday. 1,000 shall fall at thy side, and 10,000 at thy right hand, but it shall not come nigh thee. The Lord is my light and my salvation. Whom shall I fear? The Lord is the strength of my life. Of whom shall I be afraid? Wait on the Lord. Be of good courage, and he shall strengthen thy heart. Wait, I say, on the Lord.
Listen, the cock crows in the Spanish camp is growing light in the east.
People of Leiden, the Spaniards will come now. Remember our oath. Death, but no surrender.
Look, they're coming.
Where?
There, creeping through the mist. There's one of them.
Wait. Halt! Halt or we fire!
He's Dutch.
Who is it? Who goes there? Dirk Van Ziel. What are you doing coming from the Spanish lines?
But don't you know? The Spaniards are gone.
Gone? Where?
They went toward the Hague. They rode past me as I came in.
Then why did they mine the wall?
Well, maybe they didn't, sir. Maybe the sea that's bringing the fleet undermined the wall.
And the fleet is coming.
Of course it's coming. Why do you think the Spaniards fled?
Listen, lad, listen.
That's the fleet now. The beggars. The beggars are coming. They're saluting us.
Thanks be to God. Thank God.
God bless Holland. God keep Leiden. God be praised.
Navigator to pilot.
Go ahead, Van.
Coast of Holland just ahead.
Good. Pilot to bombardier. Open bomb bays and prepare to bomb.
Right. Bomb doors open. Navigator to pilot. We're over the target. There's West Capella. There's the Great Dyke.
Pilot to bombardier. Target below. She's all yours.
I need a little left. No, too much. Give me a little right. Just a little. There. Steady now. Hold what you've got.
Once again, the dikes are broken to drive an enemy from the land. And now we who share in this work should remember that we had a stake in that other victory, too. We, you and I, were saved at Leiden. That was the city where, 35 years after the siege that Holland broke, a little band of Englishmen driven out of their own country because of their religion took refuge. Our pilgrim fathers found refuge there because Leiden held and remained free. From Leiden to Plymouth Rock was the way we came.
The NBC University of the Air has brought you Chapter 7 of the new historical series, We Came This Way. Next week, We Came This Way will present the story of the Puritan Revolution in England. A handbook containing background information with suggestions for further reading is now in publication. We shall be happy to send you at cost of mailing this valuable We Came This Way handbook, especially written for the current series. Send 25 cents to cover the cost of printing and mailing to We Came This Way, Post Office 30, Station J, New York 27, New York. This program is presented by the NBC University of the Air, not only for listeners in this country, but also for our servicemen and women overseas, to be transmitted to them wherever they're stationed through the Armed Forces Radio Service. Tonight's script was written by Frank Wells and directed by Ira Avery. The original music was composed by Leo Kempinski and conducted by Milton Catums. Feature roles were played by Lon Clark, Rock Rogers, Owen Jordan, and Ruth Amos. The narrator was John W. Vandercook. This series is presented as a public service of the National Broadcasting Company and its affiliated independent stations. This is the National Broadcasting Company.
The Columbia Broadcasting System presents The Free Company.
For what avail a plow or sail or land or life if freedom fail? This is Burgess Meredith in Hollywood speaking for the Free Company. Today we hear Francho Tone and Gail Patrick in a new radio play by Robert E. Sherwood, author of Abe Lincoln in Illinois and There Shall Be No Night. The Free Company is a group of leading writers, actors, and radio workers who have joined together on their own initiative to present a series of dramas illustrating and explaining our basic American liberties. All members contribute their services as a free expression of their faith in American democracy and in the basic civil rights which make that way of living together possible. The list of writers for the Free Company includes some of the most distinguished names in American letters. 9 Free Company members have won Pulitzer Prize awards. Our dramatists include Maxwell Anderson, Sherwood Anderson, Stephen Vincent Benet, James Boyd, George M. Cohan, Norman Corwin, Paul Green, Ernest Hemingway, Archibald MacLeish, Orson Welles, Elmer Rice, and John Steinbeck. Today, Robert E. Sherwood's play, An American Crusader, seeks to honor the memory of a man who fought against cruel odds for freedom of speech and for freedom of the press. His name was Elijah Parrish Lovejoy. He lived more than 100 years ago when our country was in a period of growing uncertainty and fear, increasing doubt of the permanence of our institutions. Americans in Lovejoy's time could be heard saying many of the same things that we hear today.
People are hollering about the need for national unity, but there ain't no such thing.
Got to abolish slavery. There can be no compromise with evil.
If we keep on the way we're going, we'll be in war, and that'll mean the end of democracy.
What this country needs is sound money.
This new doctrine of President Monroe sounds good on paper, but it won't work.
The trouble with this country is we're getting mixed up in the politics of Europe.
The trouble with this country is...
Trouble with this country. Trouble with this country is... Trouble with this country is... One of the greatest American voices was raised in an expression of faith at the dedication of the Bunker Hill Monument in Boston. It was the voice of Daniel Webster. If the true spark of religious and civil liberty be kindled, it will burn. Human agency cannot extinguish it. Like the earth's central fire, it may be smothered for a time. The ocean may overwhelm it. Mountains may press it down. But its inherent and unconquerable force will heave both the ocean and the land, and at some time or other, in some place or other, the volcano will break out and flame up to heaven. So spoke Daniel Webster, and his words burned into the soul of young Elijah Lovejoy, who had gone from his native Maine to the Theological Seminary in Princeton. The day before his graduation, he is called to the office of Dr. Guthrie, the Dean of the Saints.
Ah, Mr. Lovejoy, I'm glad to see you. Do sit down.
Thank you, sir.
I wanted to have a word with you before you leave us. I knew there would be no time in the midst of tomorrow's ceremonies. Of course, like all the others, you'll be glad to be out of this stuffy, scholastic atmosphere.
I'll never stop being grateful to you, sir, for your kindness, your understanding.
I hope you really mean that, Mr. Lovejoy.
I shouldn't say it if I didn't mean it, Dr. Guthrie.
No, I'm sure you wouldn't. I've observed that you're one who isn't afraid to speak his mind. I believe you'll make a great name for yourself as a minister of the gospel.
Dr. Guthrie, I have a confession to make.
I'm eager to hear it, Mr. Lovejoy.
I'm not going to preach the gospel. At least not from the pulpit.
But tomorrow you'll be ordained as a minister. You've been working hard for years to reach that goal.
I know it, but there's a great battle going on. A battle which will decide whether freedom and slavery can continue to exist side by side in the same country, in the same world. I want to join in that fight.
And how do you propose to fight, and where?
I have an opportunity to become editor of a newspaper in St. Louis, Missouri. That's where the fight's strongest. Do you feel I'm making a mistake?
Naturally, I'm disappointed. I've been a minister of the gospel all my life. For the past 30 years and more, I've been instructing young men like yourself in the Word of God.
And you taught it well, Dr. Guthrie. So well that you filled me with a desire to preach it. Not only from the pulpit, but in the marketplace, in the streets, on the farms, and across the great waters. For the Word of God is the promise of justice to all men, equality for all men, freedom for all men, by God's will. I know I can say these things in the church to pious people, but I believe I can say them more strongly through the press, the free press. More people will hear them.
You realize, don't you, that in following this course you'll be risking your life? This war you're entering, it's a bitter war. A war to the death.
I realize that, Dr. Guthrie, but if I am risking my life, it could not be in a better cause.
That is no more than the truth, Mr. Lovejoy. May God give you strength in the battle that is ahead.
Thank you, sir.
Elijah Lovejoy went to St. Louis. He gained recognition as a young man of high promise, of courage, of intelligence, and integrity, and there was no one more appreciative of his good qualities than a certain young lady named Cecilia Ann French.
Good morning, sir. Good morning, miss. What can I do for you? We want a marriage license.
Well, I suspected as much, seeing as this is the Marriage License Bureau. Name, please.
Elijah Parrish Lovejoy.
Date and place of birth.
Albion, Maine, November 9th, 1802.
And the lovely bride.
Celia Ann French. Born right here in St. Louis.
You don't have to say when. Your occupation, Mr. Lovejoy?
I'm a minister of the gospel. And I'm editor of the St. Louis Observer.
Oh, I thought I'd seen your name somewhere. Been having a mite of trouble, haven't you, Mr. Lovejoy?
Yes, a little.
Well, I guess everybody is these days. Here's your license. Wish you both luck.
Thank you.
Thank you. Elijah.
Yes, Celia.
What did he mean, trouble?
Oh, nothing in particular. All newspaper editors have trouble as part of our job.
Elijah, don't lie to me. You have been having a particular kind of trouble, for my father said.
I know what your father says. He thinks I'm one of those crazy reformers who'd better keep their ideas to themselves.
And maybe he's right, Elijah. If you endanger yourself by expressing those ideas.
Celia, listen to me. Your father's a dear old gentleman who has a fine, big plantation and many slaves. And a beautiful daughter. And ideas and beliefs that are not the same as mine. He doesn't think anything should ever be changed.
And you think everything should be changed?
Not quite everything, but many things. Oh, I don't say your father isn't justified in his convictions. But he doesn't realize that times have changed. That what was true in his time is no longer true in yours and mine. He helped shape and build his world, as you and I must shape and build our world, Celia.
But if it means danger and trouble.
There is always danger and trouble when men battle for truth. Celia, darling, I love you more than anything in the world except one thing.
And that one thing?
Man's liberty.
But that's only an idea.
Not an idea, Celia. An ideal. An ideal for which men have fought and died since the beginning of history. It's a never-ending battle, for in every generation there's a new threat, a new menace. And it must be met, no matter what the cost.
I'm not sure that I understand. And I'm a little frightened, too. Oh, Elijah, promise me. Promise me you'll keep out of danger for my sake.
I promise to love you for as long as I shall live. Be content with that, darling. And right now, let's forget everything except the one important fact that we're going to be married.
Slavery must be abolished. The other group was shouting, each state must mind its own business and leave its neighbors alone. And Lovejoy was forced to move his printing press across the Mississippi River to Alton in Illinois. There he and his bride set up housekeeping anew, and he started another newspaper.
Look, darling, the first issue of the Alton Observer. Aren't you proud? Here, read it.
Slavery is a crime against God and man. It is poison in the very lifeblood of human society. But, Elijah, you're saying the very same things that you said in St. Louis.
Well, of course I am. They're the truth.
But people don't want to hear the truth.
Nonsense, Celia. Illinois is a free territory. It was the truth that set us free. It will keep us free.
It's all very well to fight for the truth, but not at the risk of losing your home and happiness and maybe your own life.
I wish I could make you understand, Celia, that the truth for which I fight is worth all that risk. Once you see that, once you understand, then you will not fear any longer.
In a way, I understand. But it all seems so hopeless. You're only one man against a city. What good does it do to raise your voice? Who listens?
When I was still in college, I heard Daniel Webster. I've never forgotten his words. They burned into my very soul. He said, "If the true spark of religious and civil liberty be kindled, it will burn. Like the earth's central fire, it may be smothered for a time. The ocean may overwhelm it. Mountains may press it down. But its inherent and unconquerable force will heave both the ocean and the land, and at some time or other, in some place or other, the volcano will break out and flame up to heaven." Those were his words, Celia. I don't want to have it said they were spoken in vain. That's why, even though mine's the only voice in all this territory, it must be raised to keep alive that spark of liberty.
At the risk, Elijah.
I'm going to fight them to the end, Celia. I'm determined.
Where's Jake? What is it? The new newspaper. Read that. Slavery is a crime against God and man.
Well, who's printing that disgraceful
It's
inflammatory...
that young preacher that just moved in. Name of Lovejoy. I say, he's the fellow they threw out of St. Louis. Sure he is.
He ain't got no right to print such stuff. That's war talk.
That's precisely what it is. Trying to stir up trouble. As Judge Douglas says, he's trying to inflame the passions of men.
If you let people like that go on talking, and worse, printing their opinions, why, we'll end up in war, civil war. Well, since we seem to be agreed, the next question is, what do we do about it?
Elijah, look. There's a mob of men coming up to the house. Men with torches. Oh, darling, I'm frightened.
There's no need to be, Celia.
What are you going to do?
I'll go out to talk to them.
Oh, Elijah.
I'll be all right, my dear.
Well, gentlemen, we just come to call, Mr. Lovejoy, to tell you you won't be needing to go down to your newspaper office tomorrow. Because the newspaper ain't any good without a printing press, and your printing press ain't there any longer.
You've stolen it?
Oh, no, we ain't stole it. We just heaved it in the Mississippi River.
Yes, you'll find it in the mud, Mr. Lovejoy.
And it won't be in very good condition for printing anymore, your firebrand war talk.
Have you got anything to say to us before we bid you good night, Mr. Lovejoy?
Just this. The Mississippi's a mighty big river, but it isn't big enough to drown all the words that are going to be spoken before this issue's settled. Good night.
You're all right, Elijah?
Yes, dear, I'm all right. But I'm silenced. Oh, you should have listened to your father, Celia. Never married a crazy reformer with no gift for anything but antagonizing people.
Would we have to leave Alton now?
I don't know. I don't know where we could go, or what we could do. We haven't any money left.
Does it matter, darling?
Yes, it does matter. We can't let them beat us this way.
But what's the use of going on, Elijah? Yours is only one voice crying in the wilderness.
All the more reason why my voice must be heard then. For surely somewhere, somehow, somebody will hear. The ocean may overwhelm it. Mountains may press it down. But its inherent and unconquerable force will heave the ocean and land.
And there were some who heard, even in Alton. Some who knew Lovejoy was fighting the good fight. And some, too, who knew that he could not fight alone.
Mr. Lovejoy? Yes, Dr. Mack.
I believe you know these gentlemen, Mr. Struther, Mr. Callahan, Mr. Enton.
How do you do, gentlemen? How do you do, sir?
We've come to you on behalf of certain citizens of this town. Citizens who've come here from all parts of the country, north and south. We represent all sorts of political opinion. But we are united in our devotion to the principles of our Constitution, including freedom of speech.
Well, I'm glad to hear those principles have not been totally forgotten by all Americans.
I'm from South Carolina, sir. My family have been slaveholders for generations. But I believe in the words of Voltaire. I disagree with what you say, but
I will defend with my life your right to say it, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Struther. You're a real patriot.
As we all are, I hope. We've taken up a collection sufficient to buy you a new printing press, Mr. Lovejoy. We wish you to resume publication of your paper.
And if that scalawag mob comes around again, call on us. We'll help you fight them. Are you ready to fight for freedom, Mr. Callahan? I'm an American of Irish descent, Mr. Lovejoy. Need I say more? No, you say no more, or any of you. Gentlemen, this is an act of great generosity and great faith. I shall do my best to justify it.
Once more, the Alton Observer printed its attacks on slavery and intolerance. But the mob was strong, and again the crusader Lovejoy was attacked and his press destroyed. He set up a new press in a warehouse in Alton. An armed guard of volunteers assembled to defend the building on the night of November 7th.
I suppose it's useless for me to ask you, beg you, please don't go down there.
Oh, I have to go, my darling. I've got to get the paper out.
They'll try to kill you, you know that.
Yes, I know it. But I also know that they can't kill what I stand for. All over the country, the Friends of Freedom are interested in this fight. We can't surrender now.
What satisfaction will it be for me, knowing that your ideals live on while you...
Darling, there are certain things that are more important than our own lives. The things which make our own lives worth living. I'm no hero. I'm just an ordinary person who believes that there's no point in being an American. There's no point in being a man unless this country lives in freedom. If I denied that belief, I wouldn't deserve to be your husband. You know it. There'd be no happiness, no peace for either of us.
All right, Elijah. If that's what you believe, then I can't change you. But I'm going with you.
No, Celia, you can't.
Wherever you are, I want to be.
I've made this fight against your wishes, against your better judgment, yet you've stood by me no matter what you felt or what you believed. But I can't let you do this. The risk's too great, Celia.
No matter what the risk, no matter what I believe, a wife's place is by her husband's side, and that's where I intend to be. I'm going with you, Elijah, and nothing you can say can stop me. I'm determined too, Elijah.
Lovejoy from printing that filthy sheet of his, and we've got to stop him now.
That's right. We can't let him get away with his radical talk any longer.
Destroy his press. Burn his warehouse. They've got the warehouse gone. Yeah, but there's only 5 or 6 men at most. We got 30.
And we got guns, and we can shoot them.
We gotta get that Lovejoy. We gotta prove to him that guns know what talk. They talk louder than words. Guns will stop his words. Yeah, that's it. Kill Lovejoy. That's the only way to stop him. Kill Lovejoy. Then you're with me, men. Show him we're with you. This war talk is being heard all over the country. He's getting people inflamed and excited everywhere. There's only one way. Kill him and silence him once and for all. All right. Do we do it now, or do we let Lovejoy go on printing his rotten paper? We'll do it now.
Here's the headline, Joe. Free men arise, death to slavery. And the subhead, our forefathers fought for liberty, so must we.
If we print that, Mr. Lovejoy, this press will go into the river like all the others.
Just the same. Go ahead and print it. Where's the rest of that copy, Celia?
Right here, darling.
Ready, Joe?
Sure, Mr. Lovejoy.
All right, let's get on with the editorial. The Declaration of Independence...
Lovejoy! Yes, Lovejoy. There's a mob of men out there. They're armed and they're surrounding the warehouse. What should we do? Lovejoy! We want you to come out of there. We're holding our fire for 1 minute. If you ain't out by then, we're coming in.
Elijah.
Oh, Celia, I should never have let you come. Now I've no choice but to yield.
Not because of me.
Yes, Celia, those men out there are desperate men. They have guns. They mean to use them. Your life's in danger here. That's all my fault. I won't let you take the risk. I'll go out.
Elijah, once you said you were not afraid to die. Then neither am I.
Celia.
If those men out there are the ones you're fighting, if mob violence and hate and destruction are your enemies, then I understand at last what you've been fighting for. Elijah, go on with your editorial.
I'm giving you one last warning, Lovejoy. You better come out.
You're not going out, Elijah. You're going to show them that not even guns can stop you.
Celia, you're wonderful. Callahan, return that fire. But shoot over their heads. We don't want any bloodshed.
I'll tell the boys.
All right, Joe, once again. The Declaration of Independence said to the people of this nation, the whole world, we hold these truths to be self-evident. All men are created
shoot?
They haven't hit one of us yet.
Hey, you! Gus! Bill, Lem! Get around there behind that warehouse and heave in some of them flaming packets. Set it afire!
You bet, Jake.
And the rest of you keep shooting back.
Final word of that declaration. With a firm reliance in the protection of divine providence, we mutually pledge to each other our lives, our fortunes, and our sacred honor. And where is our sacred honor today if we submit meekly and timorously to evil?
Look, Macklin's been killed.
Oh, how terrible.
What about the others?
Two are bad hurt. We can't hold out much longer.
There's no use going on.
There's
Joe.
every use in going on. That's just what that mob out there wants, to stop you, but they can't.
I'm thinking of you, see, of your safety.
Please, if you love me, Elijah, go on.
You're very brave. All right, Callahan, keep firing.
All right.
Let's go on, Joe. Ready?
Yes.
In the preamble to the Constitution of the United States, it is written, we, the people of the United States, in order to form a more perfect union, establish...
No use, Lovejoy. We can't go on. They fired the warehouse. There's nothing to do but surrender. It's suicide to go on. Suicide for all of us.
We've got to fight on.
No, Celia, Callahan's right. There's no use going on. They've trapped us. I've got to go out with them.
Oh, no, you mustn't.
It's my fight, but I've got to finish it my way.
Come on out, Lovejoy. We got to finish up. Come on out.
Elijah, I can't bear to have him.
Are you coming out, Lovejoy, or is you?
You've been very brave, Celia.
It's you that's made me brave, darling. Without you.
And we've got to go on being brave, both of us. The fight didn't begin with us. It won't end with us.
This is your last chance, Lovejoy.
I'm going out to them, darling.
Yes.
I love you. I love you so very much. Remember that. Always.
It's about time, Lovejoy.
There's no use continuing your useless murder, gentlemen. You succeeded?
You bet we've succeeded, and that ain't all.
Once again, you've succeeded in suppressing freedom of speech.
Oh, what's that? We thought you'd learned your lesson, Lovejoy, but I guess you're slow to learn. Big bullets to learn here. How many times? We've gone on and on with your war talk. Now we're going to put an end to it once and for all.
Do you really believe that guns can suppress freedom of speech?
We can certainly suppress you, and that's all we're after.
If you believe that in suppressing me you suppress the beliefs and the ideals for which I stand, then I pity your ignorance.
What's the use of letting him go on talking? Why don't we get it over with?
Let me say this one thing. If preaching the gospel of freedom is a crime in this land, then I'm a criminal and I'm ready to die. Other men have died for that same gospel, and God willing there'll be men who come after me, willing to die.
Let him have it, Jake. As long as you're ready, Mr. Lovejoy.
I'm ready.
So be it.
So died the Reverend Elijah Parrish Lovejoy. In the halls of Congress, an ex-president of the United States, John Quincy Adams, rises to speak.
Elijah Lovejoy is the first American martyr to the freedom of the press and the freedom of the slave.
And in the years that went by, the gospel of freedom that Lovejoy had preached would spread through the land. And in that same state of Illinois, an obscure small-town lawyer arose and spoke that he was a future president of the United States, and his name was Abraham Lincoln, and he fired the imaginations of men with these immortal words.
If we could first know where we are and whither we are tending, we could better judge what to do and how to do it. A policy has been initiated with the avowed object and confident promise of putting an end to slavery agitation. Under that policy, that agitation has not only not ceased, but has constantly augmented. In my opinion, it will not cease until a crisis shall have been reached and passed. A house divided against itself cannot stand. I believe this government cannot endure permanently half slave and half free.
As Elijah Lovejoy gave his life for freedom, so did Abraham Lincoln give his life for freedom. The Union was saved, and this nation did endure, all free. Today, the freedom Lovejoy fought for, freedom of the press, is increasingly denied as the enemies of all human liberty march to victory after victory. And under the threat of a world half slave and half free, let us renew again the pledge of Lincoln, and let us once more highly resolve that government of the people, by the people, and for the people shall not perish from the earth. Franchot Tone and Gail Patrick, soon to be seen in MGM's Love Crazy, as well as the author of today's drama, Robert E. Sherwood, joined the Free Company under chairmanship of James Boyd, contributing their services without payment. Lee Stevens composed and conducted an original musical score. The Free Company producer is Charles Vanda. To the Screen Actors Guild and to the American Federation of Radio Artists and to the Columbia Network, all of whom have combined to make this series possible, to all these people, with a word of a special thanks to Irving Reese, who directed. This is Burgess Meredith offering the sincere thanks of the Free Company.
Enjoyed Mr. Sherwood's play this afternoon will be glad to know that a complete copy of the broadcast has been printed for distribution to listeners. For 10 cents, the cost of printing and mailing, you may receive your copy. Write to the Free Company in care of the Columbia Broadcasting System, New York City. Copies of subsequent Free Company plays will be made available each week as the series goes on. Next week at this time, the Free Company presents One More Free Man by James Boyd, with an all-star cast including Alan Dinehart, Betty Field, Elia Kazan, Margot, Dorothy McGuire, and Lionel Stander, and will be directed by Norman Corwin, with music by Bernard Herrmann. This is the Columbia Broadcasting System.
October 1940. Suddenly, peace was abroad. From overseas, the agony of the innocent massacred was rising, darkening the light of the world, making a mockery out of the wily stratagems of temporal political alliances. To me, the issue became a simple one: freedom. I wrote a play, and the distinguished actor Raymond Massey said, "Yes, of course I'll do it, anywhere, anytime." But the radio network said, "Sorry, we're not at war. We have no enemy. We still do business with all customers." So Mr. Massey and I flew to New York from California, pounded on tables until the microphones were given us in small surrender.
Every Man's Theater, written especially for radio by Arch Obler. Tonight, our star is the celebrated actor of stage and screen, Mr. Raymond Massey, in an adventure of our times, This Precious Freedom, the second of an exciting series of plays especially written for radio and brought to you each Friday at this time and over this station by Oxidol. And now, Mr. Obler to tell you more about tonight's program in Every Man's Theater.
This is a fictional story, a play about a tomorrow which had never happened here.
Morgan,
Yes, sir?
Can't you make this crate of mine go faster?
Sorry, Mr. Stevenson. We're bucking a pretty stiff headwind.
Come now, don't tell me the heavens are conspiring to keep me from getting back to work. Open her up, Morgan. I've had enough vacation.
Yes, sir?
That's better. You know, Morgan, I should think you'd be as eager to get back to the city as I am. After all, a young fellow like you, month up in the woods with nothing around but those overstuffed squaws. Well, I, for one, am going to be glad to get back in harness again. Of course, I'm not going to admit that to Mrs. Stevenson. I talked to her for the last 10 years about cutting myself off from civilization, having a real vacation, and... Morgan, what's the matter?
Oil line open.
By George.
All right, take it easy, Mr. Stevenson. We're okay. Just fasten your safety belt.
Where are you going to land?
The field ahead. Hold on. Don't be afraid.
Don't be a fool. I've been in forced landings before. All I want to do is to get down there fast. I've got to get to the city. Got to get back to my business.
Yeah, guess there's no one home, Mr. Stevenson.
No one in the fields and no one to help us. Fine end to a vacation.
I guess we'd better try to flag a ride into town.
Wait a minute.
Huh?
Someone coming. All right. Doesn't make sense, that, on a main road. Well, about time.
If he don't stop...
We'll make him stop. Driver! Driver!
Driver! Hey, driver, stop!
Driver, stop!
Stop!
Driver, my forced landing out here. Could you drive me into the city? I'll give you $25. I'll give you $25.
Okay, jump in.
Morgan, you better stay.
Okay, jump in.
Morgan, you better stay here with the plane. I'll send someone back.
Yes?
Stay here with the plane. I'll send someone back.
Yes?
I hope you're a fast driver.
Fast enough.
I hope you're a fast driver.
Fast enough.